You can't miss the castle in question. It stands on high ground which rules the county for miles, and the corner turrets reach 100 feet above even that. The De Veres built it around 1140. 300-odd years later, they felt safe enough to replace the drawbridge with these elegant arches of warm brick. That star, or mullet, was a gift from divine providence. What happened was that in 1098, Aubrey de Vere was fighting the Saracens at Antioch. Well, it was getting late in the day and darker, and it looked as if the Saracens might get away with it. Suddenly, magically, this 5-pointed star appeared on Aubrey's standard, and the scene was lit with its brilliance. Well, the Saracens were caught, dazzled, and beaten, and from that day to this, the De Veres have never let that star out of their sight. This is a minstrel's eye view of the Banqueting-Hall, with the largest Norman arch in Europe springing over it. The keep is the surviving part of what was a heavily fortified establishment, which became less of a strategic necessity as the English got accustomed to the idea of Norman rule and settled down to make the best of it. Nowadays, the descendants of the vanquished are seasonally employed at the castle to sell tea towels, pens, postcards and other souvenirs. The swish of thin tyres and the tick of gears are the right sort of sounds for Castle Hedingham. Before it was blighted by cars, it would have been awash with youth hostelers, glowing with the effort of having got there under their own steam. It's a little mecca for the peddling classes even yet, and here's the reason.
It does indeed.
I must say I've seen some bike wheels in my time, chaps. That's a rare thing.
This is a unicycle wheel, no less.
So it's not even a bike wheel?
Not exactly, no.
It's simply a solo turn.
That's right, it certainly is.
Very rare.
Peter Cowling and Simon Dorr run one of those weird bazaars for bicyclists. The highest technology is devoted to making less and less bicycle, and the less of it there is, the more it seems to cost. To own one is to belong to a rather special club which meets in places like this.
I must say I'm impressed by the speed with which you're doing that. Now, is that skill, or is it routine?
It's practice. There's obviously a touch to wheel building in the same way that there is to any everyday job, and the experience helps you to do the job more quickly.
Because when one thinks of wheel building, notwithstanding the fact that you're dealing here with modern materials, one thinks of it as being an old-time craft. I mean, do you see yourself as a representative of an old-time craft?
Oh, well, to some extent, yes, that's right. It's an art which has obviously died out in most other areas of wheels, and cycles are one of the few areas where spoked wheels are still used commonly.
What are the sort of things you have to look out for?
The main thing is to use patience when you're building a wheel. Hurry the job and you end up with a badly tensioned wheel. The tension does have to be very even, and so time does have to be taken when you're building a wheel.
Of course, the pair of you are wholly involved with the business of cycling and dealing with cyclists. Are you both keen cyclists, Peter?
We are indeed. My interest is more down to just getting to and from work nowadays, and a few odd time trials that I manage to get out during the week. But that's about the sum total of the time that I spend on my bike nowadays. I've got a wife and 2 children, and so we have to spend a little bit of time with them, otherwise I'd be forever on my bike, I think.
So if it wasn't for the family, you could have been a world champion.
Well, I don't know about that. Not on a bike, I don't think, anyway.
Castle Hedingham is one of those jewels in the English countryside crown which almost defies you not to boast about being here, even if only to drop the folks at home a postcard to tell them. It's a lovely place to be. On a blazing summer day, it's a bonus to be outside, working or just watching the work being done. In this heat, the place assumes the sort of wonderful lethargy which makes magnolias feel really at home. The price of living in a postcard view has been rising over the years. Well placed to watch the values here is local estate agent, now retired, Rodney Hatfield.
Well, Rodney,
You are Hedingham born and bred. You've not strayed very far from home.
Not basically. No, it's always been base, except of course for war years. That we've all come back here. Yes, we came back here as soon as the war was over again.
Were you never tempted, though, to move anywhere else?
No. Well, once did try for a job on the south coast, but I was glad I was persuaded not to go.
So what then is the sort of magnetic appeal of a place like Castle Hedingham that keeps you here?
Community, I think. Community. You know the people, you're all friends. I think that's important.
Yes, at the same time, over the years, you must have observed the change of function of certain properties. I mean, houses which are no longer houses, shops which are no longer shops.
Yes, well, I can quote the, what is now the Moot House, which used to be 4 cottages.
Now a rather superior restaurant.
Yes, oh, very nice, very nice, yes.
And what about values? Because some of these dwellings, as they would have called them then, would be fairly humble.
Of course, I've been wise. I bought all the cottages that came up in those days because they could be bought for a few £100. I mean, I can think of sales, private auction sales, where we sold cottages for £600 or £700. Then they went to £6,000 or £7,000, and I suppose you want £80,000 or £90,000 to buy them now.
Where will it all end?
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
I'll say it does.
Yes, yes, yes.
The square is like the hub of a wheel, and the oldest bits of the village revolve round it. This was once the Falcon Inn, built in the 15th century and modified by someone who thought that sash windows would be all right in a medieval facade. He was wrong. The belief is that the place was built by a De Vere, the 13th Earl of Oxford, for his head falconer. Quite a sporting family, the De Veres. The Falcon is a private house now, but the Wheatsheaf is still a public one. It's a bit vulnerable on that tight corner. It gets bruised now and then by clumsy truckers who can't quite make it. And there's the bell, which since the 16th century has cheered the people of Castle Hedingham, and still does. It's delivery day, and the beer truck follows the ruts of the coaches which used to call here. If coaches wanted to call again, there's room for them, and the stables are still standing. The stairs rise to a room where Benjamin Disraeli addressed a Conservative club, urging loyalty to the party, the Queen and the country. It's available even yet for functions. The pub these days is run by Sandra Ferguson.
Hello.
Hello. Now, this is a place I've read about.
Have you? I hope it was good.
It was pretty polite, yes.
Anyway, what can I get you?
I think a pint of IPA would go down very well.
Okay. I've just got to start a new barrel.
That's my kind of timing. It was the good pub guide which paid the compliment. Friendly old pub, it said. Well-kept IPA tapped from the cask. And here it comes.
Right, I've just got to pour that off because that's really young age. And I'll get you.
Yes, most definitely not for drinking.
And would you like a straight glass?
Yes, please.
Right. There we are. Okay.
Splendid. First today. Here's to the bell. Goes down well. The Bell was a place of refined entertainment once, with drama, music and song for the quality. And that was in the 18th century. The advertisements would advise that the moon will be favourable to those who come from a distance, being at the full. St. Nicholas Church, 12th century. But the tower was built in the 17th. An earlier one fell down, and rumour has it that they sold 5 of the 6 bells in it to pay for the new one. For 46 years, Ernie Brown, known as Bunny, has climbed up here to keep the clock ticking. The chap before him did it for 46 years as well, before passing on the handle. Bunny's lost count of the times he's done the corkscrew climb to the clock and down again. Bunny Brown is the right man to care for the clock, seeing as how he's always tinkering with machinery. He collects lawnmowers, and they can still keep grass perfectly barbered in Regency stripes. Besides routine maintenance, Bunny puts his workshop to creative use as well. He builds miniature steam engines with every lever, rivet and nut in perfect scale. The scent of smoke and steam in much greater quantity hangs elsewhere in the air of Castle Hedingham. The Colne Valley Railway. It must be carrying more passengers now on any given day of operation than it did when the trains ran between Cambridge and Wakes Colne. The only destinations now are nostalgia and novelty, just round that bend. And they're here as well, on the station itself. On a crowded day like this, it is a bit hard to step back to a time when Castle Hedingham's platforms dozed between trains, but the reminders are there. So it comes as a shock to learn that pigeon baskets and milk churns were never stacked on these platforms, and engines never stood steaming in the sunshine, not on this precise spot. The railway people have taken liberties with history. When Dr. Beeching axed the Colne Valley line in the early 60s, Castle Hedingham had its rails taken away and its station was left stranded. But there were some determined souls who decided that a piece of the Colne Valley Railway should live on, so they relayed part of it, unfortunately 2 miles away from the station on the other side of the village. Now, it didn't make much sense to have, on the one hand, a railway without a station, and on the other, a station without a railway. So the two had to be brought together. What they did was to demolish the old buildings, number the important bricks, bring them all over here, put it all back together again, and here it is, authentically old and brand new. One of the prime movers of the railway is Dick Hymas. He's reserved seats on here. The Colne Valley line is justly famous for its fine food. These carriages aren't merely cherished relics of the railway. They make up a working restaurant, a sort of gourmet shuttle. Dick Hymas and I discussed the bill of fare. Well, I was going to ask about that, because here you have haute cuisine and yet a very short railway line. Yes. How do people actually equate this little trip with a real railway journey?
Well, what we tend to do is to sell people the lovely food and the atmosphere. The journey to us is not important, and what we've found is that even with the customer, by the time they've had this delicious food put in front of them, the lovely wines, because chef does a wine menu, so he gets a glass of wine specially chosen by him for each course, so each wine complements that course. And by the time they've had the first 2 or 3 courses, on a Saturday night, for example, it's a 7 or sometimes even an 8-course meal, and they've got through all of this wine as well. It's so superb. I mean, they could be travelling to Venice. Indeed, these coaches were designed to do just that.
So, who needs actually to go anywhere?
Well, this is it. And the atmosphere in a coach like this, the comfort, the ambience, it's gorgeous.
The romance of transport from another time. When you've led a relatively blameless life, it's a bit of a surprise suddenly to get a summons, especially on a drowsy day in an Essex village. But this car, with blue lights on top, drew up, and the local bobby in it issued a persuasive invitation to visit the police museum. And this is it. crammed into what was once a flat at the back of Castle Hedingham police station. It started as a private collection when a couple called David and Georgie Clark encountered some friendly cops in America and realised that they knew nothing about their own British police. Their collection used to be housed in the King's Head at Caulfield, but they handed it over to the Essex force, and for the time being, this is its home, the policeman's lot, now and then. The policeman's lot, here and there. The custodian of this lot and my arresting officer is PC Peter Caulfield. Peter, it's a fine collection, I think as fine as any I've seen in such a confined space, but the space itself is a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This is an operational police station, as you appreciate, and it's very difficult to find extra space for the exhibits we've got. We would like to expand, but there isn't really any room.
But at the same time, paradoxically, you'd also like more exhibits.
Yes, we would. We're desperately short of Victoriana. This is the 150th anniversary of the Essex Police, and Essex Victoriana in particular is in very short supply.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the stuff that you have in here is actually current police equipment.
Yes.
Are you finding that other forces are cooperative in letting you have bits and pieces?
Yes, they are, though we've concentrated mainly on Essex since we started looking after the collection, because it has been lacking in Essex. And obviously, as this is based with Essex Police, we would like to show the public what this particular force is about.
Yeah, among the stuff here, is there one particular favourite of yours?
Yes, there's a poor chap lying on a stretcher with a bloody stump of a hand, but that was from necessity because he was made up of bits and bobs of mannequins and I was a hand short. So giving him a stump sort of rather fitted the fact he was on a stretcher.
I must say, I salute your enterprise, sir. Well, after all this time, I think it's for you.
It sounds like it.
Margaret and John West have restored the craft of the potter to the village. Castle Hedingham was once slightly famous for the work of Edward Bingham, who manipulated clay into classically proportioned pots in the 19th century. The Wests, besides working as potters in their own right, also teach the art. They turn out items which range from the practical to the simply decorative. Allowing for what's on their doorstep, it's hardly surprising that castles should figure fairly often. The castle figures in the output of another Hedingham craft-based enterprise. The raw material is silk, and the enterprise is the Humphreys Weaving Company. It operates from the old school, which now has the grander name of De Vere Mills. Richard Humphreys trained as a silk textile designer from the minute he left school, and when the firm he worked for closed, he used his redundancy money to buy antique but still workable machines which would otherwise be scrapped. And now he runs the only company in England which weaves silk on hand looms, using methods which have hardly changed for generations. The basis of the technology is one of the earliest instances of what could be seen as a sort of computer program. Each card governs the pattern which is being woven.
Do you ever lose your place?
Well, the cards on the programme actually tell me what's actually happening in the weaving, so you just have to keep the shuttles running in sequence.
But from time to time, surely you'd forget which was in the right hand, which in the left hand. So.
Well, yes, if you do make a mistake, then you have to back up and take the mistake out, because obviously the customer is expecting a perfect sample.
This is a wonderful assembly of antique apparatus. I was wondering, though, what it could do that modern machinery can't.
Small quantities, I think, is the thing. There's no reason why modern technology couldn't recreate some of the fabrics that we make, but of course speed is the name of the modern textile trade, and everything that we make here being hand woven is very, very slow. But of course we have a very rich quality of cloth.
And that cloth can be seen in grand houses and government buildings all over the world. AD 1842 was the year when the chapel was rebuilt to make room for a congregation of 700. Nonconformist worship was on the increase then.
That's a lovely verse on that one, isn't it?
This patient rubbing and scrubbing, measuring and making notes in the chapel graveyard is all in the cause of historical research. It's being undertaken by members of the very active Hedingham Heritage Group. Prominent among them is Anne Stockill. Well, I'm sure the late Kate and the late Isaac Root would be very grateful. But what's the aim of the exercise, Anne?
It's to record these inscriptions before they disappear, because they are disappearing. They're disappearing rapidly through pollution, erosion. Even storm damage can make a whole area of graveyard disappear, broken down. And we clean it down and we record it on a piece of paper, send it off to the records office, keep a copy ourselves, put a copy in the chapel, so that anybody coming along can use those records, because sometimes what is written on the stone isn't apparent in births, deaths and marriages, that sort of registration.
So effectively what you're doing is providing people with the raw material for research.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what sort of research are they engaged in? Are they looking into their own family history?
Often their own family history. People from America, Australia, New Zealand are particularly interested in finding their roots.
Yeah. Have there been any surprises that you've come across? Certain inscriptions which have either amused or...
Yes, I think one in particular is the word relict, which is referred to if a wife is alive after her husband. Instead of a widow, she's called a relict, which I'm not sure I'd like to be called a relict.
The red-haired
relict.
Inscriptions on stone commemorate the dead, and so does this, the Memorial Hall. The band is Don Nevard's New Orleans Ginger Snap. Bram Buckley-Saxon laps it up. He helped to get the village jazz club going. Even plays now and then, under protest. He'd rather leave it to lads like these to serenade a summer night as hot as the music.
And Paul will be back for a new series of The Village Show, hopefully without his cold, later in the year.